Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dabo Swinney, the Clemson Tigers, on an absolutely legendary heater on the recruiting trail. Something I really haven't seen before. We got 6 commitments in the last 72 hours for this Clemson program. There's 2 things that really jump out to me. The most recent commitment, Marcel Gipson. I think even some Clemson fans maybe overlooked this one, only a 3-star prospect from the state of Texas. What I would stress to Clemson fans is look at the last really, really good guys in the secondary that have come to Clemson. They've been 3-star guys as well. You look at Ashton Hampton, true freshman last year. You look at guys like Avian Terrell, Khalil Barnes, Shelton Lewis, all of which were 3-star prospects coming out of high school. Dabo Swinney and Mike Reed are elite at evaluating guys in the secondary, taking these low 3-star prospects out of the high school ranks and having them become absolute studs for this Clemson program. There's a lot of people that get really tied to the high school recruiting rankings. And I'm not saying they don't matter because they certainly do. But when it comes to Clemson, their evaluation, sometimes it's a little bit different. But a lot of times, especially in the secondary, it really pays off for this Clemson program. So that's where I want to start with Marcel Gipson. Yes, he's a 3-star prospect. A lot of Clemson's best football players in the secondary, guys that are all conference, some of the better players in the country, they were 3 stars too. And I think the second thing to note is, man, there was a lot of people in the national media over the last 12 months that thought this program was dead in the water. It sucks to be a Clemson hater over the last couple of days in terms of what you've seen Clemson do on the recruiting trail. You look at the buzz around this program. Not only do I think this is a bona fide national championship contending program going into the 2025 year, but this is a team that is gaining some massive momentum on the recruiting trail as well. A lot of people counted them out. A lot of people thought college football passed Dabo Swinney up. I think Dabo Swinney is going to have something to say about that going into the 2025 year. And what I would stress is they're doing all the stuff off the field right. I mean, go back to a guy like Matt Luke joining the staff as the offensive line coach, defensive coordinator Tom Allen. Dabo Swinney's quietly making some really big changes to this Clemson program that are clearly kind of catapulting this team forward going into 2025. Now, I want to get into Marcel Gipson. Want to get into also Chancellor Barkley, who committed to Clemson late last night. He's a really fun one to get into the tape with. Before we do, and as always, to the Clemson fans, just want to say thank you to you guys and the support y'all been throwing in the comment section, the support that I've seen from you guys on the social media pages. It means the absolute world to the boys. This is something I love doing, specifically talking the recruiting trail. The amount of support y'all have shown the fellas in the middle of March. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's start with Marcel Gipson. We'll work our way to Chancellor Barkley. Then we'll get into what Clemson has in the 2026 class. And I want to start with Marcel Gipson again, guy that, probably a little bit underrated according to the recruiting services because he's not the biggest. He's not the fastest, and we've historically seen the recruiting services really gravitate to the long, really fast cornerbacks. But what Marcel Gipson is one extremely smooth mover. I mean, his ability to mirror wide receivers, break on the football, he's a really twitchy kid. That's what stands out to me first, the movement patterns. The second thing, he's a technician. Kind of like Grayson Littleton, who I know ended up kind of flipping his commitment to Texas, but was in Clemson's class for a little bit in the 2025 cycle. Same thing we talked about with Grayson Littleton. Really good technician, knows where to put his hands, really, really good with his eye discipline. And then thirdly, I should say, IQ. You see him get his hands on a lot of footballs, and he's got some really good instincts at the cornerback spot when it comes to jumping routes, getting his hands on footballs. And so, yeah, probably a little bit underrated because he doesn't have the crazy track and field times. He's not a 6'2" guy with 33-inch arms. But as a football player, this kid knows what he's doing on the football field. And that's oftentimes the struggles that we see with young cornerbacks coming to the collegiate ranks. They might have the size, they might have the speed, but the technical portion of the game, the IQ stuff, the stuff that's kind of hard to teach, some of them struggle. And a guy like Marcel Gipson, he's a guy that kind of checks a lot of those boxes. And you dive into the film, it's very clear to see why Clemson likes this kid a lot. And I think it really does start with the short area quicks, the ability to really break on the football and close on throwing windows. I mean, he's just the instincts are really, really good here, consistently closing on the football, getting his hands on it. Now, you see in the special teams game, this more highlights the movement skills. I mean, the short area quicks, the ability to make people miss. He ain't going to play wide receiver. I'd be surprised if he returns any punts, but you see the really fluid movement skills even when he has the football in his hands. And you know that's going to translate to the defensive side of the football as well. You continue to work through the film and you see him hustle play. Every Clemson commit we break down, you see at least one of these plays where they just don't give up and they play with the high motor. You know Dabo Swinney wants to fill the program with these kind of kids, and it obviously pays off for Clemson in terms of the culture they create. Continuing to work through it. This is kind of the IQ stuff. Looks like we got like a little bit of a cover 3 action going on. Hey, I'm just sitting back in deep zone coverage, reading the eyes of the quarterback. And when that ball is in the air, hey, we'll go sideline to sideline, go make a play on it. A kind of a ball hawking cornerback to a guy that always seems to gravitate to the football and get his hands on the football, which you're really liking your cornerbacks as well. He likes to play a little press man too. Aggressive at the line of scrimmage. He ain't the biggest guy, but he is not afraid to compete at the line of scrimmage. And this is really good technically as well. We're just going to squeeze him right out to the boundary. We're going to get our head around to the football. Even with the good throw, that's hard to work against a cornerback that is in the back hip pocket and squeezing that wide receiver to the boundary. There's a lot to like about Marcel Gipson. Now, we haven't had a chance to talk about Chancellor Barkley, so I want to talk a little bit about him as well. 6'3.5", 285, road grader, interior offensive lineman. He's a guy that when he puts his hands on opposing defenders, he is moving them off the line of scrimmage, and a pretty dang good athlete too. You'll see him climb to the second level. You'll see him pull play side. But again, when he puts hands on opposing defenders, it is devastating, the pop that he has in his hands. And one of the biggest takeaways from this Clemson class in 2026, one, you're all the way up to top 3 in the country in the recruiting rankings. You got 3 blue chip offensive linemen committed early in the 2026 class. That means something. We talk about this all the time. The one position you want to make sure you get right on the recruiting trail is the offensive line, because it's a really hard position to address in the transfer portal. So if you miss in the high school recruiting class, you just might be out of luck and might be struggling on the offensive line. You want to make sure you stack these kind of bodies out of the high school ranks. Clemson's already got 3 blue chip guys, and they're trending for quite a bit more, and they might pop over the next couple of days. Top 3 class in the country. It sounds like we might still have some commitments to break down over the next couple of days. This has been whatever they did with this recruiting weekend at Clemson should be a case study in terms of how to put on a recruiting weekend. So whatever they did worked in a big time way. We will close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.